welcome back to Pommy and Oz. I hope we're all doing really well. Yeah. What more can be said? Big shout. Firstly, just a couple of points of reference. A few of you have contacted me on Facebook. If you use the phrase pom or pommy, you evidently will get a ban because evidently that's now a racially aggravated word. So just a reminder, if you are going to tag me anything, make sure it's Pommy in Oz. Facebook have contacted me and said that's fine. Evidently, some clowns have complained in the past that Pom is offensive to them. So I apologise on behalf of my brethren. Not everyone can actually have some fucking testicular fortitude like myself. So I am only a small collection of my people. Unfortunately, some people do piss and moan. But there it is. So obviously we're on the review. 33-point loss to the Lions. If you watched the preview, I wasn't surprised. And it was more of the same, wasn't it really? It was more of the same when you actually go through it. Very poor around the ball, very scrappy. It's what I find really hard to comprehend, right, is at the start of the year, these boys looked up for it. They had edge and appetite, real hardness, a real up for it sense of the game. Even win, lose or draw, they really looked like they were looking to impact the game. And I don't know what's happened since 8-2. Internally, but something has to have happened because that is really, really apparent. Really apparent. And we're going to take a look at this. And you can see here, the pattern is growing. You look at tackles inside 50, down 54% when they lose, 17.5 handballs, hardball gets, 16.5 negative in the turnover differential. Remember, we were number one in a cluster of 6 games pre the St Kilda game. Remember that. That was the next layer we added. 1.4 down in clearances. We know that's a huge staple of Voss's game. Uncontested marks down by 25.6. This is the big one, the ball movement. 10% down almost from its ability to go from coast to coast. And it's inside 50 in disposal efficiency, rounded out to about negative 5.4. And what is it? What is it? We know I've been preaching from the start, from very early. Round 5, someone sent me the clip in the review. I said, we're going to know a lot about these gentlemen, though, because it has changed on field. Their ability is definitely, there is a game plan. We saw the fruits of that at the start. That 10% has left, really, because it's up here in the mentality. And you're starting to see it even in Voss's press conferences. I implore you to go back and watch Voss's press conference and go and watch the one against St Kilda. The one against St Kilda, when we lost, there was a real ownership of it shouldn't come down to kicking set shots because things weren't right in various areas. And now we're getting told that it's all about playing in these games at this point of the season. It's really good for their development. The lessons are being learned. The big one for me that he said is they're well aware of the importance of each fixture, but I can't tell you why they weren't switched on. And it's really simple. It's fear. It's mentality. You see it in your workplace. You don't have to have worked in high-level sport like myself or work in an industry where you're charged with development to see it. Blind man. Helen Keller could walk and tell you what she's seen and heard. It's that obvious. And until we get real as a franchise, I'm starting to question that we're always going to be that 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th side until that's fixed. And it's really interesting. I text Paolo, right? Good mate of mine. He's a good mate of yours as well. Uncle P, as we call him on this channel. He calls me Uncle Pom. But I'm just going to read you out the text I sent him. Right, Monday morning after the Adelaide loss. We'll know a lot about this side and this club in its culture and how it changes if they don't do for one of the following. Right, 1. I'm waiting for Carlton to produce hours worth of training footage, just showcasing the tackle shown because evidently that was an issue this week. 2, one of the senior cup players will come out and double down on Voss and say he's the love of his life. H did that on Tuesday. The first one was done on Wednesday with the training footage. Another leader of the club will hark on about how times were good at the start of the season. We were 8-2. Best transition side in the comp. Best clearance side of the comp. Walsh did that on Tuesday. And 4, towards the end of the week when everyone's kind of got over it, don't worry about it. Jezza, his birthday is this week. They'll bring Jezza out and they'll probably post him at training just to remind us that we used to be good back in the 80s, 70s. Do you know what I mean? There it is. It's so predictable and they've got into conservation mode, even without them stats. Like, a lot of the old guys complain I use stats. Stats tell you everything. When you've got an inkling, stats will back it up, or stats will disprove it. And it's a mentality. It's their ability to handle pressure. It's the fact that the club now is more focused on deflection and downplaying it than it is of being accountable. And Voss has talked about from the start of the season about being accountable, about owning it. And we hear PeterV was ill. He was managed. But he did double down last week, did he not, on JSOS? Did a press conference after being omitted. So do you know what I mean? You have to cover that. And it's all right people saying you don't know what's behind closed doors. You find me many people in the world that don't give you a microid of what they say behind closed doors. So you've only got to look at social media. People are it's very hard to mask what you do behind closed doors in front of people. It's very hard. It's the old 5-date rule. 5 dates, the 5th date, you usually see the real person that you've been dating. And the real person's coming out under pressure. Do you know what I mean? Deflection from the ownership. You know, the Carlton media department has fucking clamoured away as quickly as possible to find some footage in there of tackling. Was the tackling evident? Wasn't, was it really? You know what I mean? If they've trained it. Then when you've got your coach saying, I can't answer the question why they weren't up for it at the start. A big part of coaching is you're the motivator. You press the buttons. That's what a good coach does. Whether that's a good boss, coach, husband, wife. Do you know what I mean? Father, mother. It's pushing the buttons of motivation. It's getting them there. And they're under major pressure. And you kind of know how it's going to be handled, don't you? It's that Cripps handball behind Noons. He's done that his entire career. And you can see the pressure indicators on these players. Cripper, when the shade's the fan, he's got to do it himself. Because he is well aware of who can handle and who can't pressure. The dot kick around the corner out of bounds, he's done that his entire career. Sardi, that turnover where he managed to hit the only Brisbane player in space. He's done that his entire career as well. These are his pressure indicators. Now, I'm only picking on them because they're just 3 examples and I don't want to pick on everyone else. But then if we go to like Dow, that game, me and Paolo did a video for 25 minutes on what Dow would do under pressure. It's not his fault because that's who he is. You've got to have structures and systems in place to help people under pressure. You know what I mean? If you've ever gone to a mental health plan, they don't fix depression. They give you structures in place so you're not depressed. That's how it works. Do you know what I mean? You can't change what you are. Do you know what I mean? You know what I mean? If you're a lovable rogue like myself that got into some hard times and did drugs, you're always that person. You just have coping mechanisms and structures in place where you don't resort to negative traits and you focus more on the positive traits. Still exists in me though. When I watch that kind of shit, I'd quite happily go back to that lifestyle. It's so baffling to me that they've been rebuilding for so long and these structures are inherent. And it doesn't matter if it's Luke Sayers, if it's me, if it's Terry, if it's Bucky, if it's Dave from the Dog and Duggars chairman. There is something at the club that I think is, we call it ego mode. If you watch the Monday show and that big presentation I did on mental well-being and how you handle structures, that's all ladened in science, so it's not arguable. You can't even argue against it. That is clinically proven on how we fix things. They've got into ego mode. You know what I mean? With the Carlton of old. Do you know what I mean? It's okay. Jezza was good. Won a flag in 95. And that is part of the problem because 95 doesn't exist anymore. Old Carlton doesn't exist anymore. New Carlton is North Melbourne, is Gold Coast. So you can't look at the past. You've got to respect the past, but you can't live in it. Because if you brought the old coaches back and the methods they used, it's scientifically proven that them structures and what we believed about motivating elite athletes actually demotivates, and it only creates a small catchment of success. And you see it. Like, the ability that Carlton have as a franchise to disengage and really, really give you what you see on field, which is weak, it's wilted, won't attack the corridor, go down the wing, because the wing is clinically the safest part to move the ball. Not when there's 8-on-1, but that is the safest area of the ground, working on the wing. It's why most teams do that in containment mode. It's safe. It's safe. And what you saw in the first 10 rounds was bold, it was progressive, it was freedom, because there was nothing really on the line at that stage. No one was talking about us. As the season has progressed, people have done, you're starting to see what happens under pressure. And honestly, like, these videos pain me, because I thought we were past them. I love doing videos for you guys and girls where there's pride, and I'm happy, and I'm giddy, and I'm a bit foolish. And I like them videos because they make me feel complete with you. And this club makes me feel complete. And to see them buckle under the pressure when everything they've worked so hard is right in their hands is heartbreaking. Because this club, that's where the history comes into it. The jersey means something. It's laden with success. You're going out there with hundreds of thousands of Bluebaggers, past, present and current, and to be behind you. The fear should not be there. And there's people like me who criticise the club when it goes wrong, when there's no accountability, because someone has to hold them to accountable. And I'll praise them. I'm very measured. I think out of all the YouTubers, I'm not bigging myself up, I think I'm the most consistent in the terms of that I can praise them heavily, but I can also criticise them heavily. And I think that's a very strong asset for anyone to have. Not bigging myself up, but I think that's very, very a huge asset for every human being to have, to be equal in its equal measure. And there's no escaping from that. It is poor. They've let themselves down. They let us down. They let their coaches down. And it's across the board. And you saw my rants at half-time. If you haven't, that was pure passion. This is more measured. It's unacceptable of what we stand for. When you're 8-2, you're looking at a 45-year first, not making finals from where we are. It's a record that we shouldn't, this name of this club doesn't stand for. It stands for success, Carlton. It did. And we've lost that in a way. You've lost it. And you can see the predictability, not just in the club, but in the fan base, because I think that's what we need. We need honesty. We need honesty from these players, and these players have got to look at themselves. And that, if you're playing at the Gabba, Voss was happy with 1 quarter. Finals is on the line, gentlemen. It's unacceptable. I'm not standing for it. And no one who pays membership should be saying, oh, yeah, it's fucking grouse. We won 12 games. No one should be. Because the goals have to change. Do you know what I mean? Your goals. Your aims have to change when you're ahead of schedule. Because otherwise, you stagnate, you plateau, you get comfortable. These guys have got comfortable. And honestly, I am so pissed off, it hurts. The fact that is the shit that they can dish up this close to the end of the season. If fear is overriding them. And this is a big call out to the leaders, the guys in power, the admin. Get down there, fucking put these boys at ease and do what you're paid for. You ain't paid for shitty little videos and shitty little sound bites. You are paid as stakeholders, as placeholders in this club to drive standards. And if you think finishing 9th is a successful season when you were at halfway point being talked about finals and winning the fucking thing, we're lost. We're lost as an enchantment. That performance was weak. There was no heart, no intensity, no effort. No bravery, no dash, no head over the ball. And that is not what we stood for at the start of the season, and we were delivered. And you need to fucking earn it, because there's 2 games left. 2 games left. Let's look at your questions. Please cheer me up, group. I've selected a handful. Comes in on Insta. Ethan Dunn, g'day to you, mate. Long-time watcher of the channel, I know. Do we have to bring in older talent that are able to stand up when things aren't going our way? It's a very good question, this. It's a very good question. So, when you look, I think a very good comparison for us, and a lot of people will disagree because they'll go, oh, their list profile is older, right? Which is one of them stats that's kind of true, kind of wrong, and I will caveat why. So, if you look at Carlton's list this week, we had 3 players 150 games or more, 3 100 to 149, 11 50 to 99, and 6 under the games of 50. You look at them, they've got 6 and 8 under 50, 8 under 50, 6 99, but 7 150s and more, and 2 there. You look at their age profile, there's a massive considerable gap there, and it is science that you need some older people, more experience. It's called the conveyor belt of development, where you have a very older, experienced guy, maybe a mid-age high achiever, and then the rookies, and you kind of just pass on the information, the intel. You've got to remember that a lot is made in the AFL, and it's one of the few sports that does it, having winners in the back room, right? That helps to, like, a very small extent. And what I mean by small extent is, obviously they can pass on what's taken. But on field, them guys aren't there. So I want to see it as, if you've ever had someone who come into your workplace straight from university, they're book smart, they've learnt all these things, but the manual doesn't tell you how to handle, say, a customer screaming and shouting at you. It has a perfect example where you say, you know, the whole empathy route. Oh, I hear what you say and I understand it, and you repeat it and it makes them fix. Try and use that in person. It doesn't fucking work. All right? Doesn't work. So that is why you need the on-field leaders. Now, Cripps, Wheatering, Walsh, they're the leaders in name, aren't they, that we have on field? You'd say Doc, Sard, they're leaders in the terms of experience. Noons, with the amount of games he's played, should be some guy that's an experienced player as well, you would say. In reality, though, Noons, Cripps don't have a lot of career success. Does Sardi? Sardi stands up to the pressure, definitely knows how to handle it. Then you go look at the Pies. There's a lot of players there that have played finals and done some very successful things. Pendlebury being a big stage. So, do I think you need older talent? I think you definitely need players around the club that are going to actively be around the group 24/7 in training, maybe in games. This is something that is a big common misconception. Age doesn't make things better. So, it's a very bizarre thing, and I see it a lot, and this might be a cultural thing, because I see it a lot in just Australian culture in general, that people will get older, they'll get better. That is not the case. If you have a 6-year-old who's reading at an age 4 level, they don't go up a year in age at a 5 level. They stay at a 4-year-old level unless there is systems in place, unless there's leadership and guidance with that kid. It's how development works. So all a year says in life is, about the age of 21, we stop learning. Our capability of learning ends. And it gets less and less and less. But what you already know becomes more ingrained and ingrained. So all that happens in a year's time is whatever Cripps is now, with no development as his leadership, it's more cemented. And you can see that in the way Cripps does it all himself under pressure. Because that has been fed to him by the club, by the media, probably by his own teammates at times, old coaches. And that's not a detriment to him. It's just he's had some poor role models around him. Some poor role models who really lack any understanding of probably anything other than kicking a footy. So, do we need him? I think you definitely want to bring in some 26, 27, well, maybe some 28, 29 years old in and around the club who can relate enough to the younger guys. But the way our list is made up now, it's about gaining these skills very quickly on field. Very quickly. And how you do that, it's not that hard. Can the club do it? The Bluebagger, go and follow her on Instagram. She's a wonderful person. And honestly, you need negativity and positivity. It's how discussion makes. And she's a very positive, very bright button is our Bluebagger. Do our boys seem nervous and going in aggressively? Spot on. Now the pressure's got in when you... And I want to word this in a tactical way. So, how Voss liked to play in the opening games was having almost 3 lines, full forward, half forward and midfield, really cram in side 50. That requires a lot of bravery, a lot of intent, because you get caught out the back. Now, what you're seeing now is they're getting caught out the back very easy because there's like a 50% committance to it. So there isn't enough pressure being laid at the source of the ball carrier, but then half of them people have gone to put the pressure on, half of them come back, creating space. And in a zonal system, space that's unguarded is chaotic. And it's why no one plays man-to-man anymore, because it's too stagnant in its methodology of moving the ball. So zonal is the way to go. This is the problem with zonals. If there isn't full committance, and there's a great netball coach whose name escapes from memory, but she really patented the pressure, and she went and worked with a lot of sports clubs with it. She said that it all comes unstuck if there's no heart. So, very hard to have a heart when you're under pressure and when you're nervous. And that is when we're looking at on-field leaders, particularly the messaging in the dressing room. There's been a lot of talk that they got beasted this week. Gum shields. It's the Antichrist. I can link you to 1,000 hours of research where people who are under pressure, under emotional trauma, we call it stress, it actually cements the negative habits associated with that when you scream and shout. Very few people nowadays are motivated by screaming and shouting. Do you know what I mean? It's good as a motivation tool before you go to battle, but in what we call a reflection period, it's actually the worst thing you can do. So I agree with you. I think there's a lot of nerves. There's a lot of nerves. There's a lot of negative energies. And I think it's a great observation, Bluebagger. As always, my lovely. Caleb, good day to you, mate. How are you doing? I love the surname, mate. If I said to you at the start of the year, 12 and 10, finish 8th, Charlie wins the Brown, I'm guessing you mean the Coleman, would I have taken it? Definitely, at the start of the season. Definitely. I'm a firm believer, though, that the best plans, end goals are written in concrete, and the method is written in sand. I'm a firm believer of that. So if you told me that at 8 and 2, I would have spat my coffee out at you. So perspective is very important in them. So I think finishing the way they do, which would be what, 4 and 6? Well, then what I do is I think, okay, let's just flip this. So I'll flip it another way. 8 and 2, that's round 10, right? 10 rounds have gone, right? So if we go back to, what, round 10? The conclusion of round 10. So Carlton were 8 and 2 at that stage. Now they would be 4 and 8, if my math serves me correct. Doesn't it? 4 and 8? Yeah, 4 and 8. 4 and 8. Sorry, it would be what? Oh, I've just told myself. 4 and 6. 4 and 6 would put you 13th. Would I have taken 13th on that form? No. Would I have been happy at 13th after 10 rounds? No. So, no, not really. Danced around that question. Sorry, mate. Thank you for your question, Callum. Paul Morgan, good friend of mine. How are you doing, Paul? Same question last week. I might have not answered this because we've gone to that. My biggest concern is the coach's response, or lack thereof. A few of them, shots on him sitting there look like tea, completely lost. I've noticed a pattern in losing games. We haven't been 3 or 4 goals up then lost. It's been clear from the first bounce. We're just off today. Mate, this is spot on. And that is it. That's the energies they're going in with. And I think what you're saying there is very important at the end. We want accountability from players. You've got to have accountability from your leaders, your coaches, and stuff like that. You have to have accountability. We just did a big management course at work that I run. And I said to them, there's a big thing, right? That you have your line managers under you. Then you have maybe you've got some Mickey Mouse position, I call them, early stages of responsibility. But you'll have your long leaders, the guys that have been there less than 2 years, less than a year. Right, and we call, if in an AFL club, that'd be your young leaders, your Sam Walshes, you guys who have just come through the system, but you know they have the leadership capabilities and stuff. The quickest way you can lose your group, and they are the most important ones, the young leaders in your group, the naive ones, because they kind of rehash what you're trying to get through to the group in everyday language and keep reiterating it. If you don't have accountability yourself, they become disengaged, and that is more detrimental to your team than anything else. You have to be accountable, particularly to them young lads when you make a mistake or make a decision. Great examples would be go and watch the Amazon Prime documentaries. Watch Pep. He does a wonderful speech when they lose, saying that this should show you that I'm only human, guys. I need you guys to respond with me when I get it wrong, because even I get it wrong. And one day you'll be in this position and you must also get it wrong. Beautiful thing. Arteta, when they lost in the recent one as well, holds his hands up straight away. Says it was all on me. Very important that you do that, because when you've got accountability, that rubs off. Accountability is a two-way street. If accountability is only one way, you are now in a dictatorship. Very autocratic methodology where that works one way. As for did he look like Teague, I think that's maybe unfair on Teague and Voss, but I get what you're saying. There was a lot of nervous energies, and I have noticed, go and watch the press conference from St Kilda to now, something's changed in Voss. I think that that's the PR at the club, and I think it's a very rehearsed. I've started noticing the last 2 weeks we've had very rehearsed it. So my message to the PR team is, if you actually care about the club instead of a fucking paycheck, do your job properly. Let them speak, because that is only creating more pressure. When you don't allow a voice to someone, that cements what they're feeling too. So, great question, Paul. Hope we've covered it, mate. But spot on. If they're not on at the start, they're not on at all. And that is a big part of the brand that Voss wants to play. And that calls it into question his press conference this week, when he said the immortal words, I don't know why they weren't at the races at the start of the game, or something along them lines. Very interesting. And we finish, do we, with Pommy. Any chance you can look at the ball movement? Seems less handball receives and way more shot kicks. We did that in the early part of the show, so hopefully that helps you out in how the ball movement. Definitely, though, you're starting to see the wing, and you're starting to see less running with, so you're not seeing them inside-out handballs. They're definitely going a lot more kick-heavy the last 2 weeks as well, which is a direct result of pressure, but also really a direct result as well of how these boys look to cope with pressure. They're looking for the safe options. They're trying to get rid of it with distance, buy themselves time. It's very poor. It's a great observation, Botsy. But you're seeing the lack of corridor use. Why? It's brave. It's aggressive. It's high risk. Very poor, Botsy. Hope that answers your question, because yes, when they move it like that, it's really, really poor. When they move it like that, it's creating more pressure because they're just sending it to contests that can be easily alleviated. It's a big concern, but they are products of pressure and your ability to pressure handle. It's a lot harder to take that handball inside and run, which you saw Brisbane do throughout the game to a great extent. And we finish with Jeff O'Day. I don't bag players. You don't, mate. Honestly, I've got to say, it's a good part of you, my friend. I wish we all were like that. I could learn a thing or two. But we are struggling under press. I think at the moment the confidence as much as anything else. However, we need one classy winger, preferably two. Cots, Noons and Lob sets do not generate enough options by hand or foot. Cots and Lobs have improved, but unders at the moment. Spot on. You're looking at them as well to really create width and avenues and exits out. And genuinely you find when Carlton are in the corridor, what they did really well in the start of the season, this also answers Bot's question a bit more in depth, is they were one of the highest teams that attacked the corridor. It was 80%. 80% on the wing. One of the highest width sides in the comp. However, I remember covering that and going into depth in it and saying that it was a misleading stat because they go back into the corridor, usually around 70, 60. Just past halfway, they come back inside. You're not seeing that anymore. And you're not seeing the wingers give us width. Lob was very good, some of them entrances into Kerno, but it's few and far between that we hit him out in space. So these wingers are really getting bogged down under the pressure that's been felt elsewhere. Setterfield and Noons are very guilty of being drawn into the contest, so when we win the ball back, there's no one there. And that is kind of that team defence where it gets a little bit crowded, if you know what I mean, because they're kind of lost between a rock and a hard place. They know they have to keep the widths as the exit out there when they win the ball back, but they also are looking at their mates dying in the contest, going, shit, I better go and help. So I think definitely this year they have to go out and, I would say, trade one in. And the problem is there isn't many out there. And I'd imagine Lachlan Scholl is a lock. Is he the answer? I think he's a work in progress, and I think he's a very talented footballer. But that goes back to the point of list makeup as well. It's going to be another guy that comes in that needs to learn. So, great question, Jeff. I think you nailed it. I do want to see our wingers definitely need to relieve it. You look at the greats, Ed Langdon, Carl Amon, Steele Sidebottom would be a great example this year. Josh Dacos would be a great example this year. They really offer something in transition, which is something we struggle. So great question, Jeff. Absolutely spot on, mate. That's it then. I'm sorry I wasn't my usual happy self. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for the support. The support is absolutely amazing. My wife did say to me the other day, she's so glad that I've got 3k odd people. So make sure you like and subscribe. Thank you very much to Zoe as well. Quack and Cauldron, go and check them out. Real good as well. Especially if you want some things, to take your mind off things. And she's a really good girl. Until midweek, Pom out.